Welcome into Crystal Ball College Football. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and what a wild week it was in college football this weekend. I had a lot of fun sitting there watching all kinds of games and just kind of coming away with some storylines from the week. And I think the first storyline that everyone is talking about is Nebraska. With Scott Frost out, he got fired, which is just a crazy story unto itself. Their loss to Georgia Southern and what was really a shocking performance in general. I mean, this is a Nebraska program that over the past couple years have been really good defensively, and now they've completely just fallen off a cliff on the defensive side. The offense might be playing better, but it's really just an allusion to the fact that their defense has taken a massive step back. This was a defense that was in the top 10 last year in many, many categories, especially advanced metrics-wise. And now you look at them this year, they're giving up 31 points per game. They're nearly outside the top 100. And you play a Georgia Southern team that I know is solid. They have weapons. Their coach is Clay Helton. Their quarterback, Kyle Van Treese, has played a lot of football games. But I mean, to look at these numbers and see that Nebraska gave up 642 yards of total offense at home, that's just extremely disappointing. And obviously, right after the game, it was pretty much decided Scott Frost was going to get fired. Little storyline that's been talked about is the fact that if they waited 3 more weeks, the buyout would have been $7.5 million. But because they decided to fire him 3 weeks before that timeline ended, they had to pay him $15 million in buyout money. So they basically said, we don't care. We need you out of here. We need to go forward with the program, and we need to figure out a way to get better as a program, as a football team, and just really clean up some of the culture and some of the mistakes that have been made. And I feel bad for Scott Frost. I really do, because it certainly felt like when Nebraska hired him that he was going to be a slam dunk hire, that he fit the culture at Nebraska, that he was going to be a guy that all Nebraska fans loved, and that he made Nebraska football fun again. That didn't happen. That simply did not happen. And I think where it went really awry is the fact that Scott Frost had never been a head coach before. He was just a coordinator. And so when that happens, sometimes the transition isn't very smooth. And he was given more than enough time to try to figure out what this program needed, what direction they needed to go, and just kind of what was next. And he was never able to figure out what was next and what was wrong and then get it solved. And so now you're sitting here and going, okay, they move on from him. What's next? And so for me, I sit back and I look at this job and I go, I think this is a pretty appealing job. I think it could be somewhere inside the top 5 in the Big Ten. It historically has been a very, very good job. But now they really need a coach who, A, has a proven track record of creating a culture and building a program, and B, needs to be a very good evaluator of talent. Nebraska can get talent. They absolutely can recruit at a very high level. I think this could be a program that recruits at a top 15, top 20 level, but you got to be able to take the right players that fit the scheme, and also guys who translate really well to maybe the NFL, guys who have a higher ceiling than what they've been able to find in recent years. And so I think if you bring that all together, there are a few names that really stand out to me when you look at this coaching search, and really 3 names. And it might be shooting for the stars. It might be 3 guys that, a lot of people might say there's no way they're going there. But I do feel like this Nebraska job is going to be one that is fairly coveted by many coaches across the country. So here are the 3 names that I kind of narrowed it down to. The first one I think is the most obvious one, and probably the guy that they should find a way to hire, and the guy who I think has the most smoke right now as far as, media people talking about him and saying that he'd be a good fit, and saying that, Nebraska would be interested. And that's Matt Campbell, head coach at Iowa State. The thing about Matt Campbell, what he's done at Iowa State, it's kind of sneaky, right? Because you look at Iowa State and kind of their win-loss record and you're not blown away by it. But if you look at the historical context behind it, you go, man, Iowa State has been around a long time and they haven't been a very good football program, at least not consistently. And with Matt Campbell, they've had some of their best years ever, including a Fiesta Bowl win. So I know he hasn't won the Big 12 championship, But he's gotten that program to a point where they're pretty much a bowl team every single year, and they're competing in almost every single game they play in. And you look at what Iowa State's recruiting and kind of their pipeline, it's not great. And so Matt Campbell is doing more with less, and that is something that I think should be very, very appealing about him potentially taking the job at Nebraska. I think in general, he's 42 years old. He's a guy who you could build your entire program around. And I think the fact that he's built a culture at Iowa State is very, very cool to see, especially because they were so far behind when he first got there. So Matt Campbell, I think he'd be a great hire. I think he'd be my top choice for a hire. He's recruited that area. He just makes a lot of sense for a variety of reasons. And I also think if you look at where Iowa State's at right now, it's probably time for him to move on, to be honest. I'm not saying that Iowa State's reached their entire ceiling, but I think they're getting pretty close to that. And they just had their best class ever and, made it to almost winning a Big 12 championship, but they didn't. So I think he's proven quite a bit there, and now it might be time for him to move on to the Big 10, go get some, flexibility by being in the Big 10. The $100 million paycheck is right around the corner due to realignment. And so the new TV deal, I think all of that encompassing, it makes a lot of sense. Next guy on the list, Luke Fickle. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about Luke Fickle because I do think it's probably slightly unrealistic that he actually leaves for Nebraska. When you look at the fact that he, I'm not going to say he turned down the Notre Dame job, but he surely was basically saying the CFP is more important than taking the Notre Dame job. So I don't know how interested he's going to be in Nebraska, but I think he'd be a great fit. He's another guy who, at Cincinnati, since he's always had a very good program, but I think he's taken them to another level. And he's continued to solidify things in that program from an evaluation standpoint and a culture standpoint. You saw how they played against Arkansas, an Arkansas team that is very, very good. They went on the road and almost beat them. I think this is a program that is just basically trending 10 wins every single year for the most part. And I think for that reason, you got to look at Luke Fickle and go, man, this guy can flat out coach football. And I think for that reason, Nebraska definitely has to give him a look because he's very proven. He's proven that he can build a culture. He's proven he can evaluate talent at a very high level, and also familiarity with the, recruiting landscape and kind of the Big Ten in general, because he was at Ohio State for a while, obviously. Final name on the list, Matt Rule, the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. His name's getting brought up a lot, and I think he should. You look at what he did at Temple. That was very impressive, turning that program around, and even more impressive what he did at Baylor. From just the standpoint of Baylor got rocked by a scandal. 2017, they went 1-11, did not have really any depth at all. No coach was winning very many games during that year at Baylor. And then you look at 2018, they made a bowl. And then in 2019, they won the Big 12 championship and made it to the Sugar Bowl, compete against Georgia. I think he's a college coach. I think that's kind of bared out in his time in the NFL. And they, of course, lost week one. The Panthers did. So things are kind of trending in a direction where he needs to make a decision, most likely, of whether he's going to go back to college or probably try to find another job, because I don't think the Panthers are making the playoffs this year. And so for that reason, he makes a lot of sense because he's gone to various programs and he's installed his culture and really built it to a very, very high level. I mean, what he did at Temple and Baylor, very, very impressive, especially because it's two different cultural landscapes between Temple and Baylor as well. You go to Nebraska, he's going to be able to recruit because he evaluates talent at a very high level, and he can kind of get it done anywhere. It doesn't matter what cities he is in. It doesn't matter the program. He's going to find a way to win football games. I think he's proven that, at least at the college level. So those are my top three candidates. Sad news, I'm sure, for Nebraska fans that things didn't work out for Scott Frost, but I also think the happy news is there's a light at the end of the tunnel, right? There's going to be a new coach. There's going to be another guy that's going to get this program excited. And I think for that reason, this was a very good decision by the Nebraska Athletic Administration. So thanks for joining today. Glad we got to talk about Scott Frost. Sorry it wasn't great news, but I think talking about these things is extremely important, especially when you're talking about a program that was really, really close to being a blue blood at one point in their past. So thanks for joining today. This has been Grayson Grunhafer on Crystal Ball College Football.